For those of you I don't know, my name is Nick Miller. I am the executive director at the Venture College, which is a program at Boise State University that helps students launch their ventures beyond the classroom. Today, we have a great panel that we'll introduce, but today I'm joined by Aitor Ferreño, who is from Diversity for Equality and Mondragon Team Academy in the Basque Country. And we have been working with Aitor as well as Ander Caballero on a program, a class that's offered at Boise State and at Mondragon called the Idaho Basque Challenge. And the purpose of this class is to bring Idaho students and Basque students together to create social impact ventures around the themes of food and healthcare. So today, we have a lot of our students on this Zoom call, and we've also opened it up to the public. But today we're going to hear from people that are working in the food social impact space, both from Idaho as well as the Basque Country. So we're hoping today that all of our guests, but in particular our students, will be inspired by the work that is being done, that you're able to learn something that you can put to use in your own career, and that will create a sense of community between our two areas, our two cultures, as well as wherever you find yourself in the world today. So just a few housekeeping items. If you would be willing to leave your cameras on today, that would be great. We'd like to see your reactions and actually know that there are humans on the other side of these computers. But please do mute yourself so that we can hear our panelists and hear the questions. Throughout the event today, you'll have the chance to utilize a program called Slido, where you can pose questions to our panelists, and then you can vote up which questions you would like to see asked. And we'll be pulling those towards the end of the session today. And I will put a link in the chat so that everyone can access that. As I said, we're partnering with Mondragon University, Mondragon Team Academy on this project. The one party I did not mention, and I believe she'll be joining us here in just a few minutes, but we also have a colleague from Oliver Russell, which is an agency here in Boise that has a particular focus on social impact. And if you're not familiar with them, I'd encourage you to check them out. They've been key partners in the both design and delivery of this course. And Sienna George is one of our colleagues that'll be joining us a little bit later. So with that, I think what we'll do to start out is we will start introducing our panelists. I will drop the link to Slido in the chat in just a few moments. What we'll do is we'll introduce everyone. We'll have questions for individual panelists, as well as questions for all of the panelists. Aitor and I will be facilitating those questions. And at any point, you can drop your questions into the Slido chat, and we will be managing those and posing those to our panelists towards the end. Aitor, did I miss anything? Anything you would like to add?
I think everything is correct. I think that you have explained everything. So maybe you can start with the panelists.
Great. Our first panelist is Tara Russell. Tara is the founder of Create Common Good. Tara, if you could wave hello. All right. Tara is a seasoned social entrepreneur, results-oriented and visionary leader, and a keen strategist. She's uniquely gifted at identifying relevant societal gaps and business opportunities, envisioning and articulating a future that doesn't yet exist, and building a capable team and strategy to attack the issue. As a founding leader of 5 for-profit and nonprofit organizations globally, Tara is a gifted communicator with deep experience presenting and communicating compelling ideas on a large scale and in high-profile environments. Tara joins us today as the founder of Create Common Good, a nonprofit social enterprise whose goal is to empower adults with barriers to employment through food service skills, training, and job placement assistance. Through the organization's wholesale business-to-business food manufacturing, Create Common Good generates sustainable, repeatable revenue rather than relying solely on grants and donations, and allows the organization to model the self-sufficiency that they teach. Please join me in welcoming Tara.
Hi, everybody. Good to be with you.
Over to you, Aitor.
Okay, the next panelist is Asier Alea. Asier Alea holds a degree in Economic and International Relationship from Boston University, a master's degree in Economics from Oxford University. He has worked in the energy sector in different multinationals, but his connection with the Basque country led him to the post of Director of Tourism and Foreign Promotion of Vizcaya, with the aim of promoting the internationalization of Vizcaya and attracting the talent, but currently holds the post of Director of Global Development and the Basque Culinary Center. So welcome, Asier.
Sure. Hello, everyone.
Okay, I continue with the next one, that is Elena Calvo. She's a food waste warrior committed to social and environmental movements for years. She did not doubt to join to Too Good To Go and now fight against food waste, leading transversal projects and awareness-raising campaigns to further Too Good To Go's mission. Hello, Elena. Kaixo.
Hello, Kaixo.
Welcoming Elena. Next up, we have Kris Komori. Kris is the co-owner and chef of Kin and a founding board member at City of Good. Kris, as I said, is a co-owner and chef at Kin, which is in downtown Boise. He has over 20 years of restaurant industry experience, from dishwasher to operator, with the belief that food can heal both body and mind. With that mentality, Kris helps lead Kin to be more than just a restaurant. Kin strives to strengthen the local food ecosystem through agricultural and community partnerships to help educate, uplift, and nourish. Kris was also a founding board member of City of Good, which started nearly 1 year ago, bringing together committed leaders and businesses from Boise to help feed vulnerable populations in the community and work towards a prosperous future for all. Welcome, Kris.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Okay, the next one is Ernesto Garcia, CEO of Kitu Snacks. Ernesto Garcia has a degree in social work and a degree in occupational science. Also, in his resume, we can find some music and saxophone, and he has a professional career focused mainly on food. That's why, because 3 years ago, he founded Kitu Food, an innovation company that is currently expanding and growing. Welcome, Ernesto.
Hello, everyone.
Great to have you, Ernesto. Next up, we have Kate Stoddard. Kate is the founder of Orchestra Provisions. Kate is a mother, food scientist, river guide, environmentalist, and friend. She obtained her undergraduate from Montana State University, double majoring in philosophy and photography, before going on to earn a master's in the science of nutrition from the National University of Natural Medicine. Some of the research done while studying at the National University of Natural Medicine inspired her food business that focuses on mending broken food systems and addressing global food security and access through entomophagy, the practice of eating insects. Kate is a social entrepreneur seeking to help humankind with intentional business practices. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.
And the last one is Iker Arranz. He's faculty lecturer in the Department of Modern Language and Literature and the Interdisciplinary Program at California State University in Bakersfield, where he teaches a variety of courses in ethnic and culture, Iberian studies, and Basque studies. He's now working a paper called The Product is a Guest, Rethinking Locally Thought Technology in Food. The research works on the great connection of food with the Basque culture, tradition, and the journey that food has made with the Basques and the relationship that food has with culture and the economy. Kaixo, Iker, ongi etorri.
Kaixo, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Welcome, Iker, and welcome to all of our panelists and our guests. As I said, we're super excited to have you all here today. And what we'd like to do, we have a pretty diverse group, everyone from professors to directors of centers and chefs and social entrepreneurs. But one of the unifying themes across all of our diverse panel is the fact that each of you has a motivation to create impact in the world. So to start out, what we'd like to do is just hear from you about what inspired you or your organization's impact. Kind of just what led you to do the work that you're doing today. And maybe we will just go in reverse order. So Iker, if we could start with you.
Okay, yeah. First of all, thanks, Nick, Aitor, Ander, everybody that made this possible. It's a great pleasure to be here. So in my case, as soon as I just got graduated and got my PhD in Reno, I moved to Santa Barbara where I started teaching Basque studies. And the very first year, one of my goals was just to create a course in food studies. I knew that food could be very interesting, although it wasn't the topic of my dissertation. But I know that food incorporates, the cultural level, but also the technological level and the social level. And those intersections always interest me. Something I always miss, or something that sometimes out of the picture in these conversations about food, is humanities. It comes later in the conversation, or productivity, efficiency, these older industrial kind of concepts ring the bell easier. But my goal was always, okay, if you train a scientist in humanities, he's going to be a better scientist always. And try to get a combination in my courses. That was my goal. Just empathy, you can taste somehow. And I wanted to put that for my students and use the Basque example for that. So that was my motivation in my case.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, that blend of science and humanities and empathy you can taste. That's the best kind. Thank you, Iker. Kate, could we ask you to go next and talk a little bit about the impact what inspired you to have the impact that you're having?
I think I thought about this one quite a bit. At the core of the cause, I think, is the way that I was raised. I've always been taught to think about how I can impact others, or how I cause and effect, really. Like one thing kind of leads down this chain of effects, and your place in it. And I think my generation was taught to go out and discover themselves before they got married into family or career. Go find yourself and go have some fun before life gets really serious. And I certainly did that and had the privilege to do that. I spent a lot of time seasonally guiding on the Middle Fork of the Salmon River, and also doing some expedition kayaking and backcountry skiing, and working always in food service. I've always had a strong connection to food and the way that connects people, and how it's such a basic need we all require. And throughout that experience, I just had this nagging hole in my life, and feeling like I was indebted to use this privilege to help people and to have an impact that's lasting. So I think that both the way I was raised and also the privilege to go and have the space to realize that what is life unless you're making it better for the people behind you or to come. I think that's at the core of my purpose.
It's awesome. Thank you. And thanks for making that so personal. I think it often does start at home. So thank you for being willing to share that. Ernesto, would you tell us a little bit about what's behind the impact that you and Kitu seek to have in the world?
Hello, Nick. Hello, everyone. Nice. Sorry first for my English, because I am not used every day. But yes, Kitu born 3 years ago and it was the born. It was because my co-founder he is agro engineer. I am a social worker, so the motivation to change the world, to make an impact in the world, in the market, it was from the beginning. We work with the small scale farms in the Equatorian region, agricultors, artisan way. So we born with this different value added from the beginning. So we need to change the things that we eat in Europe, in Spain, and I think that Kitu is a little different. We try to do something different because everything here in the market is everything industrial, everything waste, everything bad. The people here in Europe only thinks in eat and waste. So we are giving a little grain in this big universe to change these things, and we are doing bit a bit. So it's a long way to do it, and bit a bit we are winning the battle.
Amazing, thank you. And no need to apologize for your English. If we were to try to have this conversation in Basque or Spanish or French, it'd be a really short call, because we would get about one sentence in, and at least for my part, I'd be done. So thank you for sharing that, Ernesto. Kris, would you tell us a little bit behind what's inspired your impact at Kin and maybe even City of Good a little bit?
Sure. First off, Ernesto, that shirt is amazing. I'm not sure if we can get it in Boise, but I'd love to have one of those. So we have, I have a business partner, and we started this restaurant, Kin. Now, Kin kind of refers to family. I think a lot of restaurants, if you've worked in food industry across the country or across the world, you'll know that restaurants have a lot of camaraderie. They can be high stress, and they can have a lot of burnout and a lot of turnover. We started a different restaurant earlier on in Boise, and we just kind of grew to its capacity, and we knew that we needed a next step. So that's what Kin is about. It's about our crew and our employees first, and how we get them better pay, how we get them better healthcare, how we make the industry a little bit more sustainable, so that it can be professional. It's not always seen as a professional occupation around these parts, and we want to show that that's a little bit different. And so we started looking inward at our own family, our own staff, and we realized very quickly that it is much more than just us, it's the whole community. We didn't mean to be making big social impacts through a restaurant, but we also know that restaurants are all about nourishing people, their bodies, their minds. It's also nourishing the community. And restaurants are all about celebrating things and making connections and partnerships. So we know that our social impact is being who we are and standing up for what we believe in, but it's also just being a piece of a bigger machine out here, just making many partnerships. I see a lot of familiar faces on the panel as well. So that's our role as the restaurant. City of Good is a nonprofit that started at the beginning of the pandemic out here. Again, it kind of started a little bit focused on individual restaurants where we were concerned about laying off our employees due to not being able to bring them in. And we were concerned that they're lower income, they were gonna be a little in need of food, as well as potentially a little bit of depression and mental health. So we wanted to take care of them. We also wanted to make sure that the local food system was supported. And with that, we sort of started these pillars and grabbed a couple local restaurants, and together we started to get food out to hospitality workers at the beginning. Now it's since grown, and it has an amazing board of people much more intelligent than myself, but we have been able to partner with the local school board here in Boise, and we are now getting food out to lower income kids and those that need more nourishment over the weekends. So it's growing and growing, and it was born of the pandemic. And unfortunately, it's a problem that will last for a long time, but we're making a more than a small step towards fixing that. So
Awesome. Thank you, Kris. And I assume that compliment towards your fellow board members is present company excluded, but I appreciate it nonetheless. All right, next up, I think we have Elena. Can you tell us about what inspired your impact with Too Good To Go?
Hello, everyone. Kaisho, and thank you for having us here. What I will speak on behalf of the 4 founders that came up with the marvelous idea of Too Good To Go. I wasn't there, just to make the point here, because sometimes people think that I was involved in this. I'm just a spokesperson here from the Spanish team. So Too Good To Go started in Copenhagen by the end of 2015, starting of 2016. 4 friends, entrepreneurs, young people were sharing a meal in a buffet restaurant in the city center of Copenhagen. And after having a beautiful dinner, they started seeing how the person in charge of the restaurant was throwing away all the leftover food that was in perfect condition, delicious, and high quality food. So they started to think that that was not that doesn't make any sense. And of course, this is a huge impact, not only environmentally, which is a strong point that we have in our company, but also in terms of social and ethical and moral concept, and of course economically, because this means also throwing away not only food but resources, processes, and efforts. So they tried to come up with an idea first centered in how to help buffet restaurants and businesses, but later on also seeing that food waste was a huge problem, a hidden problem in many cases, because it's super, it happens in every corner of the world, let's say, and in many businesses, in many kind of stores. So they came up with an idea that could help them to get to sell or share this leftover food by selling it by a reduced price and connect. So they built this Too Good To Go mobile app that can connect you as a user and may geolocalize you, and then it shows which restaurant, which stores, market stalls, supermarkets, any kind of food businesses with leftover food by the end of the day is actually offering you this potential surplus food, so you can buy it in a reduced price and you can save it from the bin, and then you buy it at a reduced price, and you can help them not only fighting food waste but also fighting climate change. And of course, with this social part, in a personal level, I don't want to be long with this, but I was fortunate to be for some months or for a year living in Canada, related to food and beverage and hotel industry. And I was seeing with my own eyes how stupid it was to be in the middle of a paradise, environmental and natural paradise, but still throwing away tons of food every day just for the sake of it. I don't know why, but with some nonsense rules and nonsense systems. So it was destiny, and suddenly a friend called me and told me there is this cool project landing in Spain, landing in Barcelona. I know you are living abroad, but this is happening on November, and I know you are coming back from Canada in November. So would you be willing to join us? And I was like, yes, after seeing all this nonsense, please count on me. And I joined the project. That's the personal story, but of course the credits go to the 4 founders.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that story. Sounds like it was destiny. All right, next up, Asier. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal impact as well as the Basque Culinary Center?
Okay. Well, I guess I come from the X generation, so I'm a Generation Xer. So I guess in my generation, particularly in the Basque Country or places like this, we were raised not so much with the conscience of trying to change the world or tackle any larger issues. Perhaps it was more like keeping it real, particularly in places like the Basque Country. And when it came to economy, our view was more like the basics, energy, manufacturing, and somehow after the 90s and when you reach change century, most of the investment and the technology went into creating what you call very nice gadgets, nice tools, social media, etc. But people like ourselves from my generation, we seem to be a little bit asynchrony with this new brave new world, in a sense that everything that was coming out was it was fun, but it didn't address any of the issues we were raised to were that important. Somehow, in the last few years, interestingly enough, the world is changing and it's going back, I'm not going to say to the way we were raised, because I think nowadays there is a more of a global conscience, which is very good, but somehow it's going back to the big challenges, not so much about looking again to how technology and how we can answer what's going to be just the next social media tool or the next fun gadget, but how we can address energy, the energy challenge, the food challenge. So in a way, it's interesting because in my 40s, I'm finding my way again, in the kind of world that I wanted to be in my early 20s, and somehow that future was stalled from us. I'm now the director of what you call global expansion at the Basque Culinary Center. The Basque Culinary Center is interesting. It's the first university in the world that tackles both an undergrad, master's, and Ph.D. food, not just the cooking area, but food as a whole holistic sector, meaning food sciences, ethics, and in that sense, it's a kind of a success story of what you call, quote unquote, blue ocean. We have occupied a space that before it was not occupied. And the drive here is that the world now is tackling food as they did tackle energy before. I mean, the same way that we have seen a revolution coming in the last few years on renewable energy and hydrogen, etc. That revolution is coming also into the food sector. And we want to be there to see how we can be the value partners, the knowledge partners in whatever comes from entrepreneurship to launching, obviously, campuses globally to, anything we have in mind. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Asier. And now knowing that you have a global perspective, of course, we'll expect to see you in Boise very soon. Last up, Tara, you as mentioned in your bio, you started several organizations. Is there a common impact theme that unites those across your work?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I feel like my story really started in 1999 when I was living in Shanghai, China. I was working with General Motors overseas, and as a young person, I was wrestling with what do I want to be when I grow up and how should I sort of use my life for good. And at that time, I sort of naively thought, well, there's one of two paths. I could sort of stay on this business corporate path and become kind of a corporate evil giant and stay on the leadership track there, or I could become this sort of humanitarian international development person and, spend my time overseas in the bush in Africa and, help save lives. And I was living at that time next to a pig field in China. And as a kid who had really grown up, I think having won the birth lottery, I have parents that loved me. I always had enough food, always had clothes. We lived simply, but I had everything I ever needed. And I was literally living next to abject poverty in an entirely different world. So as a very young person, that just was a formative year for me. And it was that year I really decided, I want to kind of go right down the middle. I want to use business as a path for good. I would like to wrestle with that and figure out what that means. But I really want to leverage my nature as a person who loves business, but try to use it in a way that would change people's lives. So I kind of set an intention for my life then that year that I was going to try to build businesses that helped unleash potential for meaningful impact. And honestly, at the time, I didn't know what that really meant, but I was intent on trying. And It was before really the term social enterprise was cool or thrown around. So in my mind, it was just this idea of kind of business for good. And so then fast forward to 2008, having just moved to Boise, Idaho, I had been overseas again in Bangkok for about 4 years prior to that, and was trying to kind of figure out what was my role in Boise, what was sort of I meant to do, how should I sort of leverage my time and talent for good. And that year, a couple things happened that really inspired Create Common Good. One, the economic downturn and really the implosion of the economy. So literally almost overnight, about half of the refugee community here in Boise was on the brink of homelessness. And there were two people specifically. I had met many refugees and was volunteering with the International Rescue Committee, trying to figure out what I was going to do here in Boise. And there were two people I met. One was a man named Eso Min. He was a Burmese former teacher, community organizer, incredible man and leader. He had many kids, and he couldn't get a job scrubbing toilets. And I couldn't get my head around that. Another man by the name of Devi Karel, he had his Ph.D. in agricultural studies, was the lead advisor to the Bhutanese government before he had to flee as a refugee. He also couldn't get a job scrubbing toilets. And so honestly, that was the birth of Create Common Good. I had been involved in building and creating other organizations overseas that were focused on job training and financial independence. You know, when someone's life is in crisis, I feel like there's 100 things people need, but in my mind, a job has always, been kind of the first step. It's my belief that if someone can figure out a way to pay the rent, then other sort of areas of their life can, continue to improve. So we began our training programs late that fall in 2008. And it was really many of those early refugee families that were involved that truly were the inspiration. You know, when I had lived in China and when I'd lived in Thailand, there were always people that were generous in spirit enough to go out of their way and help me. And so, it was really those people, I feel like, that inspired a lot of what we have become today. So.
Thank you, Tara. Yeah, obviously you find a lot of purpose in your work, and it sounds like part of your work has been helping others find purpose in their work, which is just a really great way to pass that along. And you get a twofer here because you have our first question. And you talked about thinking through social impact entrepreneurship before that was a thing, or even a cool thing for that matter. You've worked in both the nonprofit and for-profit sector, and in both areas, it seems like you've been able to anticipate problems and market changes ahead of others. So we have a lot of people in our audience that are new entrepreneurs that are looking to take on big challenges in the world, but also trying to understand what's already been done or what may be, in process of getting solved. So do you have any advice that you'd pass along to them as they think about their social impact journey and how they position themselves upstream of others or ahead of the trends that are happening in the marketplace, and maybe even just sharing something about your experience in doing that as well?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think sometimes when we have ideas of entrepreneurship or some big social opportunity, it seems really grandiose and large scale. And yet in my experience, everything I've been fortunate to be a small part of building has really come from a gap, a small gap, noticeable gap, a problem, a burden, something in my own life or in the life of friends or the people around me that needed fixed. It usually isn't a giant thing. We think of a business like Tom's Shoes and we think, oh, wow, that's so big. And yet, it started with a small notice that these kids didn't have shoes to wear. And so, I think paying really close attention to the human condition is honestly the best way to get a sense of opportunity. I think that ethnographic research and qualitative research has always been the beginning and the foundation of every business I've been part of starting and building. And really that comes from noticing kind of a hunger within either yourself or people around you. And so it can really start small. I always say, like, think big, but start really small. And so much of the entrepreneurial journey is really testing hypotheses, you know, coming up with sort of a problem statement or a question and exploring, you know, whether or not that's accurate or not, and really what can you learn? It's really about framing your learning in the early steps of any entrepreneurial journey. So, you know, for many things that I've been part of, it really started with a notice of, hey, this is something I would like to see either in my life, or wow, this is a situation that continues to come up for my friends reaching out to me for solving this specific problem or this specific opportunity, and that referring to this last purpose-driven travel business I was building. But, you know, it's sort of, it's often a small whisper, I think. It's not this giant thing. You know, Bezos probably didn't start Amazon, just like woke up one day and like, woo, gonna do this. He probably went to Walmart on a Saturday and parked 4 miles away and thought, I'm never, ever, ever going back to Walmart. And then, you know, so it's often like these kind of, you know, my kids were part of the Idaho Entrepreneurial Challenge years in a row. And I think the way they help small kids start this process is so smart, and we should all do it. They teach them to identify 5 or 10 bugs, they called them. And these are things that like bug the kids that they want to fix. And you'd be amazed how brilliant these kids were with coming up with business ideas. And I think it's the same for us. You know, what bugs us that doesn't leave the back of our mind? You know, what are the things that bug you that you kind of go to bed with and you wake up with? You know, they don't leave you alone. In my experience, the things I've been part of, they just don't leave you alone. It's like they stay with you, and they're not leaving until you take action towards solving the problem. So I think, you know, awareness and attention, and just really that noticing of the human condition is the first step.
Thank you, Tara. And we last week, for those that are in the class, we did an immersion experience related to the problems that they've identified, and really tried to put ourselves in that situation, as well as, you know, find those problems, like you said, that keep you up at night, that you just can't get out of your head. So thank you. That's great advice. Aitor, I'm going to throw it over to you, and I think you have the next question for Elena.
Yeah, we can move to the Basque country, and I want to ask Elena about Too Good To Go, because it's not only a company, it's also a movement of waste warriors that is growing larger and larger. What inspires the Too Good To Go movement, and what is the next steps, and what is the big dream for Too Good To Go?
Cool, thanks for the question. Actually, I think with the mission and vision, I can answer the first part of it. Too Good To Go vision is we dream, actually, we dream of a planet with no food waste. And this actually means that Too Good To Go doesn't exist anymore. So this is a bit stupid, but is what it is. And I think it's very nice itself. And then our mission is to inspire and empower everyone to fight food waste together. And this stresses the everyone and stresses the together. And the words inspire and empower are very important for us. This is why in the company we saw that only with an app, we wouldn't be solving the problem. We wouldn't be achieving or aiming for this planet with no food waste, because this is a solution that comes at the very end of the problem, and it only redistributes it. But this wouldn't mean that a surplus food doesn't exist anymore. So we would need to change the whole system and inspire and empower everyone. So that's why the idea of a movement was born, and that's why we established not one solution, which is the marketplace, which is the real take action solution that everyone can have in their pockets by just downloading the app. But we actually work in 5 different pillars of work. One of them being the marketplace, one of them being the app, of course, but the other 4 being households and families, because every one of us, like, we tend to think about consumers, about citizens, but these people are actually us. We are actually these people. So when we talk about food waste in households, we are each of us, each owner of a store, each decision maker, each politician has an own kitchen and an own house. So we wanted to change behaviors and make a difference in here. We also work in another pillar, which is the businesses, of course, not only as a partners in our app to sell the surplus food, but also exploring with them what can we do in terms of fighting food waste together. For example, we detected that many businesses, like producers, also had surplus food. So we started developing a solution for manufacturers, for producers, that actually could help them redistribute this surplus food on the warehouses or in the factories, not only in the last step of the value chain, but also checking and inspiring their employees and seeing how can we work with the whole company, because usually with big corporations, we tend to only like work with one department, and we are missing the rest of the employees that also would need to believe in the company's missions or projects, right? And the other 2 pillars would be education or schools, because next generation of businesses, of entrepreneurs, of decision makers are now in schools, are now in universities. So it makes a lot of sense if we want to go for a long-term change and for a real solid change, we need to start thinking what's going to come next. So for example, in our website, we have several free materials that we share with different age groups, and also helping with some guidance for teachers, so they can bring up the topic of food waste in schools, or we can maybe help some university students or university groups in a hackathon or solving some challenges and seeing how can we tackle food waste or talk about food waste in a broad sense. And the last one would be public affairs or politics, because when a change needs to come to stay, actually it usually comes with regulation, with laws, with registration, with legislation, and this is hard and this is difficult, and usually this kind of legislation comes late because we are seeing now with plastics or with single-use plastics, actually, which is like very demanded by consumers or very demanded by some organizations. And now we are seeing them, the governments, for example, legislating, but in 2 or 3 years in advance. So it's going slow, but once it comes, it will make everyone do this change. So you have no option, even if you still don't think about climate change, or even if you don't think this is a change we need to do. If legislation tells you so, you will need to. So we also opt for this kind of positions and to empower and make sure that this change also happens. So with these 5 pillars, we try to really embrace the fight against food waste in a 360 degree and make sure everyone is on board.
Wow, that's a very comprehensive look at how you can have impact. Thank you for sharing that, Elena. And the next question is for Kris. Kris could be one of those restaurants in the future for you, Elena, at Kin. Although I imagine they're pretty conscious about their waste. Kris, a couple questions within here. One, is social impact a movement that you see in the restaurant industry, or is Kin kind of an outlier in that regard? And then two, can you just share how you incorporate social impact at Kin and what that looks like in action?
Sure. Yeah. I believe that social impact is becoming a little bit more normalized in how restaurants work. Now, I think that would depend on each market and each individual restaurant. I think it's a growing thing, but I don't think it's quite there. It hasn't hit the tipping point in terms of it being prioritized in restaurants, especially small business restaurants. I say that just because the restaurant industry is a little bit notorious for having razor thin margins. As Elena has been talking about, we deal with a live perishable product, so it's difficult to make the money side of it work. And if we can't raise enough money to begin with, it's hard to give money back or just to donate and volunteer time, labor hours within that. So there is an inherent problem with restaurants kind of doing that, but I think that's only if you look at it in a specific frame of mind. So how Kin, and I guess I should preface this by saying Kin hasn't opened its doors to the public yet. We were supposed to open last March, about the time when all the restaurants got shut down. We have come up with different ideas, but our plan was always to, the way we can help with social impact and the way we can help our communities, that we are, as I mentioned before, it's about partnerships. It's about being who we believe in, and it's about taking small steps. Now, a restaurant has a little bit of a platform where we can maybe, hopefully, grab people's attention away from their phones and their screens for an hour or two, and we can connect on a level that is not typical right now, I think. And within that connection, we can flood them with more information, a little bit of, not necessarily our agenda, but just a little bit more information that is different than a normal restaurant. So the food we serve is a little bit different for the community, I would say. But the experience is different because we want people to know, we want our customers to know that it's more than just the food we put on the plate. It's where we source it from, it's how we handle it, it's the story behind it. And the story of our dishes and our beverages are always connected with the social impact. So it's the education of where this agriculture produce came from. It's the story of the farmer. It's a story about food waste. Elena, we do a lot of dishes and menus that are based around sourcing and grabbing produce from the farms that's about to turn. And they may be a little bit uglier. Maybe some bugs have eaten through the leaves and the grocery stores won't take it. So instead of wasting it, we go out to the farm and we harvest it ourselves. It's a lot of work, but we then put that story on the plate and we definitely let the customer know that story. Part of it, it raises value to the dish and to our restaurant, but it's important because of the platform that we have, because of that moment in time that we have, to educate the consumer a little bit about some of the problems that are happening in the industry. So we're not looking to make huge changes. Right now we're trying to make too many small changes, I'd say. We need to focus a little bit, but we know that we're just that piece of the puzzle. You know, we're an opportunity for different places. I know we've been working with Kate and the crickets. Sustainable protein is another huge issue in the food world. And so we're taking little steps in experimenting how we can get people in Boise to eat crickets, which is a task, I would say. But that's sort of how we see our role. Restaurants are a little bit glamorous here and there, at least on the outside, on the social media side. People watch chef shows and restaurant shows and think, oh, look how amazing that is. On the backside of it, it is not like that at all. But we are going to use those shows and social media to at least help raise up these issues that we're all talking about. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Kris. Just as a quick follow-up, can you tell us just a little bit about, maybe a little bit more about City of Good, how you came to be involved in it, and maybe even just, how your restaurant partners within that organization?
Sure. So I gave a kind of a quick timeline of it, how it started, and a little bit out of necessity. I guess one thing we didn't mention before is how we feared that with all the restaurants closing, the farmers would not be able to sell their spring products and therefore not have the revenue in order to plant summer products, which in this area, the late summer products are really the cash crops for them. The nightshades, tomatoes, I'm sure you know Idaho potatoes a little bit. So those kind of things are much more prevalent. We were worried that without a little boost in the spring, they were gonna really struggle. So it wasn't just restaurants, and it wasn't just, it was also the farms that we were really concerned about. Well, a lot has changed over the year, and restaurants are starting to come back, and it turns out the farms are actually doing really well, because all the local consumers just bought directly from them, which they were making way more money. So it was we didn't expect that, but that was a really good thing to happen. The way that our restaurant now works with City of Good is, again, we're just a small piece of a larger partnership. We are one of, I believe, 7 restaurants right now that are, every week we make meal kits for the kids. Now, we found out in the school district that while lower income kids, they get food Monday through Friday, but on the weekends there is a gap. As Tara was mentioning, it's a gap. Now this is 2 days out of 7 days that these kids are potentially not getting food. We took a lot of time to research and to figure out, to test how we do it. And then we have a pretty good system. It's all built on volunteers around the community. But we're able to get 5 to 6 to 7 meals to these kids every weekend. It gets dropped off at the school that they attend. And it not only gives them nourishment, nutrients, so that they're stronger, they're healthier, their brains can develop faster, but it also is meant to be something special for them, so that they don't feel like it's just a handout. They feel like it's something for them. And that's kind of the power of food. They're excited about it. You know, they don't just see it as, oh, I need this to make me healthy. They say, this is a special treat for me. And so that's part of how it physically and mentally is supporting these kids. And it's so much bigger than what we thought it was going to be. Because as a restaurant we are kind of on the higher end fine dining side, and you get caught up in ego and making these fancy plates and taking stupid pictures of them. And you forget exactly why we got into this. And it's at the core to make sure people are healthier and happier. And what better way for our cooks to learn than to have it be for a kid that needs it. And so this has changed our mentality of cooking. This social impact has changed our entire core of who we are and why we do this. So we thought that we were doing something good for someone else, but in fact, it is just one of those cases where it has impacted us so much more, and it has inspired us, and it has shown us that little steps like this make a huge difference. So we'll just keep doing that. And hopefully the goal is to bring other restaurants in, so that we can feed more kids, but we can also show this to more cooks, to more restaurateurs, to the community at large, that these things really matter. And we're kind of grassroots. We're starting small and making a change from the bottom up, but I think that's good. Most restaurants, we feel like the underdog anyway, so it's the way to connect with them.
Awesome. Thank you, Kris. And I think sometimes being the one who's willing to take that risk, take that first step and serve as an example to others is both really useful and very commendable. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to throw it to Iker, and I think Iker has a question for Ernesto.
Yeah, we can follow with Ernesto, but maybe before start talking about the company, we can start talking about the name of your company, because Kitu sounds like a Basque word, but turns out it isn't. So what is the meaning behind Kitu, and what the relations do they make Kitu with your company social impact? And more focus in the company, what makes Kitu a unique food innovation, and what is the challenge or need Kitu help to address?
Okay, thank you for the question, Aitor. Yes, the Kitu looks like a Basque word, Basque, but it's not. Kitu is a Quechua word that means the middle of the earth. Is the name that Incas give to the middle of the earth. And in Spanish, translate to Quito, the capital of Ecuador. Ecuador is where we bring the vegetables to Basque country, to Bilbao, and distribute to Spain and Europe. So this is we name it Kitu to the company because of this, because it is where we bring the vegetables, and it's one of the best things of Ecuador is for one side is the quality of the vegetables, grows from the 400 meters till 4,000 meters in the Andean mountains. And another nice thing is because it's in the middle, there are no seasons. In the middle of the earth, there are no seasons. So all the year you can have a good quality of vegetables, not like that Kris told, like in the end of the summer, and it depends of the season. Here in Bilbao, in Basque country, in Europe, we depend of the seasons. So in Ecuador is the same season all the year. Also, not only for the vegetables, we work with the small local farmers in a little fields who we work with all in a sustainable way of the three pillars. Is the economic sustainable, social environment sustainable, and a social sustainable. Because we help them with education, with machines, with planning of the season of the growth. So also we work with them with giving work to all the family, and we pay for them for the vegetables more than the farmers in the close field who works for a big industries who pay more or less. So it's one of the base of our company is this sustainable way to make something, the little grain that we spoke before in this complicated market. Another thing I want to say is because we are everyone is speaking when you go to these meetings and these things. Everyone are thinking in entrepreneur as you have to change the world in a big way, and this is not. I think that like Kris, to make us, you only have to improve something in a good way, with a good quality, with a good packaging, or with a good logistic, or with a good distribution. So it's to improve something, to make the world better, to make a good quality, and because everyone is think in the to do these entrepreneurs, these improvements here in Basque Country, everyone is thinking only in technology. If you go to create something or to do innovation, innovation is almost the same of technology, and everyone is technology. And the people who thinks in food, we are like in a little way, in a little corner, except Basque Culinary Center and a little exception. So I would like to the people who think in to improve something in being entrepreneur in a food world, they can do it. They can do it, and it's improvement something. Also, the example of Too Good To Go is really nice because it's an improvement to fight with the waste food, and also with the technology that is the application, but it's normal. It's a super good way, and we cannot to be alone of the technology, but it's not the only. I don't know if I explain good. So there are more things more options to be entrepreneur in food, not only in technology, because here I don't know, but here in Bilbao I only see innovation, technology. So this is the thing that I don't know if I answered your question.
So that was great, Ernesto.
Can I jump in for a second, because I loved what Ernesto said, and actually this is something we really talk about this at Too Good To Go, and one of the nicest things that we claim for is that in Too Good To Go we try that technology brings people closer. So you need to fight food waste with the app, but actually you need to walk to the store to pick up the food and then connect with the store and connect with the people. And it's actually something that we try, that it's like a neighborhood. So you don't go to the other part of the city or to the other city or to the other country to save food, which doesn't make sense. And I think this is what you said. It's really nice that we can think beyond technology, what can bring us closer. Just like, I was not offended at all by because I think it's really true.
It's really good idea, and here I heard something like Too Good To Go, but Too Good To Go appear like a really strong thing and really good planet. So it's congratulations for the thing, and I hope and I am a user. I have the app in the phone, so really nice. In our way in Kitu Foods, that is the thing that I told us me. We are the innovation that we did is not like a big scale company. It's like improve something to do to the people something healthy and something sustainable between the hour of the breakfast to the lunch and the lunch to the dinner. So in between hours, the people only have a snack. Always is a dirty snack, and not a healthy snack, or a fruit. But in between fruit and in a donuts, there are many things, and we only have a little vegetables snacks to the people can eat with a good quality, with a good packaging, with no additives, with no allergen, with many certification to do a really good product to the people. But it's not a super innovation like Too Good To Go. And it's a little grinds that I hope that this is the way to change the world. It's really difficult, but step by step.
Thank you, Ernesto. And our next question is for an entrepreneur that is very much in the same vein you were talking about, of not necessarily a technology product, but one that is making change in the world, and that's for Kate with Orchestra Provisions. Kate, as Kris mentioned, you use crickets as your food source. And one, can you tell us why you chose maybe not necessarily crickets, but just insects in general, and how that plays into solving a larger challenge in the world and what that challenge is. Let's start there, and then I have a follow-up question for you.
Yeah, so I guess in my graduate studies, I was studying iron deficiency anemia in particular. And the real big inspiring body of research that I came across, the United Nations and Food and Agricultural Organization had put out. And it was kind of like, well, we should be eating bugs. And I was like, what? This is incredible. And I'm obsessed with this idea. Turns out this is a very big traditional food staple for human beings. Many cultures closer to the equator have never stopped eating insects. And what's really interesting are all these little tiny isolated pockets of research that show that people have overcome nutrient deficiencies in this way. Of course, they're really far down the food chain. They require tiny bits of water and feed and arable land. And so I thought, gosh, this just makes so much sense. We can make a lot of food really quickly and efficiently. I chose crickets in particular because not because they're the best. There are lots of different insects I believe we should be eating. Ants seem to be in the food world like very tasty. But crickets have been manufactured at scale for a long time already. So we have the efficiencies, and it's a little bit more affordable and accessible for me to be able to like have consistency, I suppose. But yeah, I kind of thought like, wow, this has the potential to be a food staple and address some really big issues of global food security. I kind of have the problem of this grandiose idea and trying to make like all these big changes. But the reason that I got really involved in this is because I have this philosophy, kind of going back to my undergrad, that the health of the human is inextricably and intrinsically tied to the health of the earth. Spending so much time outside, I feel this like motherly quality to protect the earth. And that really makes my interest focus in food systems, because this is one of the biggest ways we are impacting the earth negatively. And so when I came across this, so many ideas kind of like coming together here, but I found that I could make a really big change by kind of pursuing insects as ingredients. And of course, in the marketplace, I see the issue is that people don't want to eat bugs. So my kind of philosophy was like, okay, well, we don't have to eat them whole. Many of the producers now, it's like, look at this amazing grasshopper in your salad, you know? And I was like, I mean, it kind of scares me, and I'm the one that really wants it to happen. So these powders can be kind of integrated into our food systems. And there are so many unpronounceable things that we eat on the ingredient label. This is a whole food, but in powder form, you can kind of sneak it in ways where people don't even notice. And if we can build the food system and make it scalable, we can really start approaching these topics of food security and getting it into places where people can address those malnutritions or deficiencies effectively.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you mentioned it could have been a variety of different insects. It could have been different ways that you went about this. As you think back to those early stage ideation phases, anything looking back now that you would have done differently, or any pieces of advice for people who may be in that stage currently? And I'm sure there's nothing you would have done differently. You made all the right moves at all the right times, right?
I have no business background really, so I've made tons of mistakes, but I've also heard that when you know nothing about business, you make these risks that make you successful. And I do think like what I'm doing is swimming upstream, but I really believe that I have something, and I'm very passionate about the possible impacts. I'd say like, don't, I think a couple things go along with my business philosophy, which is humility and evolution. Nothing is ever staying the same. So why should your business? And the humility goes towards like these ideas I have, like potentially I'm sitting in this perspective that doesn't really work, but that if you're flexible and have humility and listen to all the other ideas that are out there in your network, your social network, you can evolve whatever the idea is into something successful. So don't rush the idea, you know, listen, have humility. Maybe your first idea wasn't the best idea. I still have like 30 other ideas that I'm going to fall back on if I'm not successful. And so in that, there's a bit of security where I know eventually I might be 60, but I'm going to be successful because this just makes sense. And you talked about the protein aspect. There are lots of different nutritive values to insects, and all the different ones have different kind of profiles. But, you know, I kind of look to the forward and feel like the food space is always going to be a safe one because it's a basic need. And protein will probably be the first. I don't know that it'll be in my lifespan, but it'll be one of these big challenges that we face. Not only are people demanding more protein because they're working out really hard, but really it's a very labor intensive and resource intensive macronutrient. So it's going to be one of the first ones that gets really expensive and inaccessible to many, many people. And already, even in our own culture, people are struggling with this. I think it's really easy and from a place of privilege to say, oh, meat's totally affordable. But then you say, oh, well, what about grass-fed beef? What about, you know, supporting your local farmer? All of a sudden, that's not very accessible to most people. And they're often a silenced population. So I have a way of going down a rabbit hole. I don't even remember the question you asked me.
No,
So
that was perfect. The idea of being humble and having a backlog of other ideas if at first you don't succeed. That was excellent. Thank you, Kate. I'm going to throw it to Aitor, who I believe has a question for Asier.
Yeah, the question for Asier is like, considering the Basque Culinary Center has served as a culinary pioneer university around the world and closely collaborated with more than 8 chefs from the Basque country, can you share with us what need you believe exists in the culinary industry and your recommendation for how to get started raising the meat some of these challenges?
Well, we started actually, that'll be for a long one. We started, I would like to say, with 8 of our greatest chefs, which is good since we have the largest concentration of Michelin star and 50 best restaurants here in the small Basque country. But also we started with, for me, it's probably more important towards our success case with the who is who of the most important chefs in the world, which was great. It's just imagine that it wasn't any fashion or design university, and suddenly you create one, and suddenly everyone who's all the greatest designers would like to be part of the committee. So our case is a little like Berkeley, the college of the music college university in Boston. Just imagine the Berkeley was created now. Now you could have pretty much every rock star on it. So it's good to have international rock stars because it gives you great PR, but also gives you a global reach. So first thing, I will say that when we think about the food, we look at it mostly in 2 areas. And I don't care if we're talking about entrepreneurship or our classes at an undergrad or a graduate level. It has to do with sustainability, increasingly so, but it has to do also because unlike energy, because the other great challenge, food is a human experience. I mean, I can put hydrogen in my car, and if it makes technological sense and it's not too pricey, I will, or electricity. However, food, you know, we run out of food, but it's an experience. It brings us together into a table. There is a lot of things that are associated to food. So the second S is the senses. So whenever you approach a challenge to food and you're a startup in your business, more often than not, you can preach to the choir, perhaps to those that are perhaps conscious about sustainability, about food waste, things like that. But you have to make it attractive. You have to make it because it's an experience. For me, Helena's example is a great example. They didn't call it too good to go for no reason. See, they started with too good. It's not, they didn't call it, it is a waste to let it go. No, they make it aspirational. This is too good to go. Why? Because, you know, it's food. It has to be always aspirational. That's why even if your proposal is not technological, and I agree, it doesn't, but innovation doesn't always have to be technological in any field, not just food. But having said that, in food, even if your approach is not technological, it might have to do with experience, with the culinary part, with the senses part. That's really important because that's how you're going to expand it. In food, it's a global experience. We all eat. So if it's not an attractive proposal, you're not gonna, I mean, you might success, but you're not gonna become, you're probably not gonna tackle whichever challenge it is in all its magnitude. So make it attractive.
Thank you, Asier. I think up next we have, Aitor, you have a question for Iker, correct?
Yeah, maybe you can start closing this part of the roundtable, asking Iker about the paper you are working on, that the title is "The Product is a Guest, Rethinking Locally Through Technology in Food." Can you tell us a little bit more about it and the role you believe technology have or will play in your relationship with the food?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. As I was listening to all the participants, I was just thinking, I think I've been there once or twice every time I teach something about food. And I feel like many people in the panel is like in the field, like working in the field there. And my case, my relationship with food, in this case, it's more academic, but I always try to make connection with the community and my students. In Santa Barbara, I was just having always a visit to a local cooperative, which had, by the way, Basque cheese, but also had a Argentinian wine, but only one producer's wine, because these guys from Argentina, which is delivering into the airport because they were cooperatives too. So the interaction was co-op to co-op in their case. And for my students to see this in a food class was eye-opening too. In the end of the day, I was teaching food, I was teaching a business model too, and a way to interact and to create a community around food. I agree with Tara when she says that, yeah, we think small and we implement the big changes later. Big changes, normally we say that in the past tense, right? The small changes are happening in the present. And this is where we put all our energies, the smaller projects that might have a bigger impact. Same with Elena. I think the first discussion probably Elena had was to rethink waste. What is waste? What's the meaning of waste? And how to tackle that and probably change that. And Kris and Kate, I think they're in a similar project on how to educate the customer, because Kris and Kate can have a great idea, but then they have to serve, they have to feed the stomachs. But if people is not ready, and I think the Basque chefs have a similar problem here, they want to experiment more, but then in the end, some customers will ask the typical traditional stick or the beans, and how you educate people to assimilate. I always start my classes saying that there's a big disassociation between flavor, which is the chemical reaction, and taste. Taste is a construction. And I like that because sky's the limit. Yeah, it's a cultural construction, it's a social construction, and we can work without limits there. So in my case, the paper I'm thinking about is in this direction, try to rethink what is local and educate people in what is local. We're already doing it. One of the videos I use is a local gastronomical club. They're cooking cod. And one moment the guy says, okay, this is very from here. He says, es muy de aquí, this is very from here. And it's talking about cod that was caught 2,000 miles away. But we assimilated something from here, very local. Projects like Open Agriculture from MIT, it's been running for a while. I really like that because it's gonna change the customer, the end user. It's kind of the iPhone of agriculture in a way. I really enjoyed this part where we have a social impact in the intersection between business, technology, and humanities. And I'm going to insist on this. In Bakersfield, everything good. We should have a similar project like this one 1 year from now. In Bakersfield, I don't think it's only Bakersfield. There's people that's hungry, and they have the biggest agriculture fields in 2 miles around, and they're still hungry. So in that equation, you have business and technology, but it's missing is the humanities part. How is that possible? instead of just improving their conditions, we're trying to rethink and trying to provide the conditions so hunger is impossible. Yeah, projects that meet the intersections between business and technology, but also the humanities, and bring these all the angles that humanities provide in relate to food. And again, yeah, the paper is going in that direction. The paper is just challenging what is local in order to really educate people in rethinking what is local and how to build up that relationship with food in more healthy and more whole way.
Thank you, Iker. I think that question of what is local is one that I'm sure all of us can identify with and try to gain a better understanding. So we look forward to that work. We are running a little bit short on time, so I think what I'd like to do is throw out a question from the audience. And if any of the panelists would like to answer it, we'd like to hear from all of you, but please just unmute yourself. The question is, what trends or innovations or even companies, maybe companies other than your own, do you see in the social impact food space that excite you or that you think show promise for the future?
I think I'll share just one bit that has been talked a little bit about, but I'm super excited and energized by the kind of waste innovation. I think there's so much opportunity in this space. I love what Too Good To Go is doing, but I also think there's a ton more opportunity to sort of really, analyze where and how we have sort of waste and what ways we might innovate, repurpose, or share, perhaps. I know there are some different technologies that continue to explode in this space. I mean, one at Boise State, there were kids who built an app to help share food on campus. I'm super inspired by just that idea. Food waste is something that bothers me deeply. And so I'm hopeful that there will be more in that space. I think the other thing is just shared resources. Food, as Kris and others have shared, there's so many financial barriers. It's a very capital intensive, business. It's low margin. And so creative ways for food entrepreneurs and businesses to share space, whether it's through ghost kitchens or other sort of opportunities. I think, I hope to see more of this in the future, just to allow more ideas to come to the light of day.
I guess I can add to this one, Tara, which is relevant to entomophagy and eating bugs. This is something that really interests me and spurs me to keep advocating for the food staple, but also isn't directly in my field. But insects have this amazing capacity to be a regenerative form of agriculture. So not only can we eat them, but they eat our waste. So in ways that we can't get food necessarily to people who need it, we can generate more food for people that is shelf stable. So there's a lot of research, especially in Asia right now, going on about how we can, in particular, the place where I source my crickets from is using cassava waste. So cassava is a very popular additive to flours right now. And there's a large part of cassava that is too fibrous for us to digest, yet the crickets really love it and can become very nutritious food staple for us. And so that's something where this food waste goes to the landfill and creates more carbon emissions. But instead of that, we can, and even in our own gardens and for populations where people are interested in generating their own food, we can make kits, and they are being made for people to grow their own insects off their own food waste. And then of course, insects and their excrement is yet another product that goes back into regenerating soil. So for crickets, that is called frass, and their poop can go back into the soil and be regenerative. So that's pretty exciting to me.
Okay, I can go next maybe. For me, one very exciting trend is, well, we as Too Good To Go are certified as a B Corp. And I believe this kind of companies that are proud to be a company, because sometimes we're mixed up with NGOs or with a volunteer group of people or a foundation. But we are companies that we try to do things in the good way. We try to have positive impact, and actually the bolder or the bigger or the stronger it gets, it doesn't need to be like, as Ernesto was saying, like huge and changing the whole world, but at least the where we impact, the more bold we are or the stronger we are, the better we do for the world. That's for me very exciting. I think we need to think in these terms. And also, actually, I think this has also been mentioned, but look for real needs or real challenges that we are facing. I think we have been long identifying with the UN SDGs or with other tools. What do we need as a society to still be here in a few years? And for me, finding real solutions to real challenges, that's the most exciting part, and I think this is the way to go.
I think that I don't know if I think that the companies that I want to see in the next steps are companies thinking in a products, the companies who have to be sustainable from the beginning, from the base, but products we need products, clean products with no additives, because I think that in the industry of the general products are full of different kind of additives. There are natural additives, that is specials and everything, but there are still a lot of very bad additives, danger additives that are very a bit going out. And I think that artisan little companies who make a good quality and clean products is the future.
If I might jump real quick, just to add in the same direction, I think what Ernesto was explaining before with the name of Kitu, and how these narratives also dress the product and really have an impact in the taste, real impact. And without that, I have a friend that is having a very interesting angle how we do the groceries now. He says that groceries have become a big libraries nowadays because we read a lot before we buy. There's no way we cannot read without buying. It used to be a day that we touch, but nowadays we read. I keep an eye also, probably Asier knows more about this, but what's going to be the next restaurant model? Are we going to change that really? And how to incorporate, like making even an inclusive pedagogy workshop kind of model? Because I think Kris might have these kind of challenges too, like how to incorporate new things and make it attractive, but at the same time, change something on them. Not just making them happy, but have a real impact. So I really want to know what's going to be the next restaurant model. Probably Bakersfield, we're going to try to work in that direction.
Yeah, if I will have to choose quickly 3 areas, it's difficult, but one would be food telling of narrative. I mean, again, it's about perception. So everything that has to do how we change the perception or improve the perception. So let's call it food telling because it's a cute word. So narrative, one. The second one will be to apply data and artificial intelligence, which I know it sounds very far-reach, but it's not. And this has to do precisely with how we can tackle more health issues. I mean, we try to be as precise with what's the medicine someone needs according to his health needs, but then we pretty much the way we adjust diet is not as sophisticated. So more often than not, our diet hopefully will be more person-based, and data is going to help us with that. And last but not least, I mean, I studied economics back in Boston, but I sometimes I wish I did physics, because a lot of things that I've seen has to do with texture. I mean, changing the flavor of some of the things that got corrupt. Some of a friend that brought about, he was coming from North Senegal, has to do, maybe if we can change the texture, you can create a new food from them. A space food, which is also in the future, but it's not so future. It has to do how you can create building materials and eat them at the same time. Changing the perception of a hamburger that is not meat-based but vegetable-based has to do also with the texture. So there is a texture revolution there coming, which can tackle everything: printing, changing your perception, changing waste. So that will be the 3 areas it will go: food narrative, obviously texture, and yeah, that's a little bit in a nutshell.
I guess I'm last. I don't even remember what the question was. Something about
any trends or innovations that you're excited about?
I mean, I don't mean to be sappy about it. There's not something in particular. There's a lot of things, but nothing in particular other than getting to see and be inspired by others, in particular this panel. I didn't know what to expect coming into this. I would say that while I am just meeting many of you for the first time over or digitally, I feel a connection to each and every person, because something in my core belief is that connection. And I am specifically for me, dining is a connection. So it's very uplifting and motivating to me to know that each person on this panel is making big steps, small steps, as we are as well, and to know that it is happening, because we can't just make small steps alone and hope that it makes a change. It's inspiring to me not only to make me feel good and to make me feel like I'm not a crazy, naive person believing some of these things, but also to know that if we are meant to help make a larger change, we have to go through at least for the restaurants, we have to go through the consumer, because they have the money. We get the money from them, they buy from other farms and other things that we believe in. And we have to educate, but we also have to, I don't know, put a little peer pressure on them, make it seem cool, make them feel guilty about it, maybe. I'm not exactly sure the best way to do it, but it's nice to know that it's coming from all over the world and coming from all different sectors of the food world. So.
Thank you, Kris. That's not sappy at all. It's all very true. And I know that we're short on time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And I personally don't want to have to attempt to follow that. So I'm just going to say thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much for being willing to share your work, your stories, your insights. This was very, very inspirational. Thank you to everyone who joined the call. Thanks for your time. We will, like I said at the beginning, we will post this onto our YouTube channel and share it out so that you can go back and review and share with others. But just appreciate everyone being willing to join. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Iker.